Over the last several decades, national laws have changed the school systems, affecting the learning environment of the traditional American public classroom. In May of 1954, the Supreme Court ruled segregation in public schools illegal. During this time in history, blacks and whites were segregated in the classroom. Almost 9 years later, in 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered a speech on the freedom and equality of all men. It was this and other equality acts of protest that began the true implementation of multicultural learning environments in our traditional school systems. Today, our community as well as our school populations have become more diverse, making it our responsibility as educators to adjust our curriculum and teaching strategies to become advocates of multicultural education. The question I want to present to you today is, does the multicultural learning environment influence the interest of learners in academic studies, specifically social studies? First, it is important for us teachers to have a solid understanding of what multicultural education and equity pedagogy are. By definition, multicultural education is central to student learning. Its goal is to ensure that all students have access to inclusive teaching and learning experiences designed to allow students to successfully take part in a rapidly changing world where cross-cultural understanding and intercultural communication skills are essential. Equity pedagogy is teaching strategies in classroom environments that help students from diverse racial, ethnic, and cultural groups attain the knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to function effectively within a democratic society. This kind of learning environment will ultimately prepare our students to cope with a multicultural world essential for their future careers. Equity pedagogy looks different for students than it does for teachers. For educators, as stated by Banks and Banks, equity pedagogy requires teachers to encourage students to generate multiple solutions and perspectives of new knowledge in comparison to looking for the single answer to a problem. It is the general idea of teaching positive awareness of diversity, while also encouraging students to be open-minded and to consider the diverse perspectives of his or her peers. It gives teachers the responsibility of being able to relate teaching strategies to the benefits of all students. Therefore, educators should be striving to teach students to have a keen understanding of cultural experiences, values, and attitudes towards people who are different from themselves. For learners, equity pedagogy creates an environment in which students can acquire, interrogate, and produce knowledge, as well as envision new possibilities for the use of that knowledge for societal change. In translation, equity pedagogy uses characteristics of a constructivist learning environment, encouraging students to independently take their schema and scaffold new knowledge and understanding using their perspectives of differentiation within their classroom. This includes respecting others for their differences, understanding why one's peers may act, dress, or speak a certain way, as well as being aware of different cultural beliefs that their peers may have, such as celebrating religious holidays other than Christmas. Remember, teachers, we are ultimately preparing our students to one day become reflective and active citizens of our society. It is essential that we as educators accommodate the diversity present in our classrooms to ensure that our students are not at risk of falling short of standards set both state and nationwide. Falling behind this early in their educational careers can hurt these children academically, handicap them socially, and extensively decrease their chances of mastering new practices and skills to succeed in the multicultural world beyond the classroom experience. As a result, our classroom makeup has changed, so we must change our teaching strategies. Now let's discuss how a multicultural education influences the interest taken in social studies. In social studies, we study a variety of cultures and ethnicities, as well as other differences that have caused great conflict, as well as alliances between people of great diversity. What if instead of simply reading a textbook and vaguely covering the basic facts of a historical event, we educate our students on how the evident differences played a role in a circumstantial outcome? For example, when studying the Civil War, spend extra instructional time studying the practices of the African American slaves, as well as the behaviors and other cultural traditions that are derived from practices present during the time period of this historical event. The results would bring about greater interest, greater respect, and an even greater understanding of why blacks and whites were treated differently, as well as why our cultures still experience differences today. It is also essential that we assist our students in establishing a familiar vocabulary for discussing diversity. It has been said that the most useful strategies in building a child's diverse vocabulary is by integrating multi-ethnic texts, which help students navigate the ethics of reading. Here are two examples of multi-ethnic texts that would be beneficial to the multicultural education environment. First, there is When the Emperor Was Divine, written by Julie Otsuka. This piece of literature could be incorporated within an interdisciplinary unit of English and social studies. The 5-chapter short novel tells a story about a Japanese-American family's experience during the internment of World War II. Using this text, literature can enhance the study of social studies standardized content. This novel's characters and their differentiating cultures, beliefs, and practices can assist your students in expanding their knowledge on cultural differences. Another multi-ethnic piece of literature you could use is Pink and Say, authored by Patricia Polacco. This text is a children's picture book about two boy soldiers, each of different ethnicities and diverse cultures, that met and became best friends during the American Revolutionary War. They learn about one another's differentiating families, cultures, and belief systems on and off the battlefield. Also, in an interdisciplinary lesson of literature and social studies, the relevance of diversity and the multiple cultures represented within this story could help students learn how to identify and better understand diverse cultures within our classrooms, as well as outside the learning environment. Interactive activities incorporating the multi-ethnic text are also beneficial. Class-wide discussions guided by the literature are intriguing and give students of differing cultures the opportunity to speak out and share authentic examples of diversity from their personal lives. Often, other classmates identify with the differing variables shared, assisting those students in building a better understanding as well as providing them with a new perspective from their own. Let's discuss the typical teaching strategy of reading and reflecting on information read in the textbook. If this is the teaching approach that you use every day, it will lose its effectiveness. Instead, use multiculturalism as a prompt to differentiate your teaching strategies while enhancing the learning experience. For example, when conducting group research, logically assemble students into groups with diversity represented within each one. Then assign each group a specific culture represented within their class, grade, or school. This kind of class project is educational by covering social studies standardized content, while also incorporating a constructivist learning style that allows children to take what they know and build upon it by conducting and analyzing their own research to discover new knowledge. Finally, I want to encourage you to invite guest speakers to come speak to your students. A guest speaker could be a student's parent, a community worker, or simply a volunteer that could come and speak to your class about their culture and the differences he or she encounters within our society and the American education system today. For example, a German male that is here from Germany working with BMW may come and speak to your class about the cultural shock he has experienced since he moved here. He may also share with them what additional education he has had to earn since he came to America to excel in his job. This can include taking a simple English language learning class or something more academically driven, such as calculus or industrial electronics. These types of teaching strategies will excite the students, enhance their interest in the overall study of social studies, as well as expose them to authentic examples of how multiculturalism extends beyond the classroom. We know that our neighborhoods and schools are becoming more and more segregated, and that it's becoming less likely that white students will attend schools with minority students. Therefore, as the population changes and the makeup of our classrooms change, we must make the appropriate adjustments and accommodations. The most effective way is by implementing equity pedagogy and multicultural education into our learning environments. This means that teachers need to make learning environments more student-centered. Our literacy practices and universal texts need to be chosen purposefully, with the goal of integrating multi-ethnic literature into academic content. Change is often correlated with negativity, but it doesn't have to be, teachers. Our nation's public school systems have come so far thanks to change in our government, in our American culture, in our individual states, and even within the hearts of the American people. So let's make a change in our school that is going to help our students make strides for the future. Let's incorporate multicultural education and equity pedagogy into our classrooms and define a new attitude of respect for diversity.